All right. I am excited about today. So we have a lot to cover today. Welcome to week 3 of Source Movement. Everybody can hear me good? Thumbs up. Awesome. So let's just do a little quick debrief of what we covered last week. I shared my story of vision and my TOFA story with you guys, and then we apply the story to the formula for success, which essentially says, solid vision with committed action plus a community or a team behind you creates extraordinary results. And we kind of explored the thinking behind those ingredients. We also did a Stairway to Heaven visual meditation, where we started looking at these steps that will support our vision sort of revealing itself to us as we begin to change our ground zero, which is our thoughts, really, our thoughts and beliefs. And so the homework was to choose a goal or vision for your life, and then use the vision worksheet that I attached, and to create that space for manifesting it. And then the mentalism homework was to think the change, essentially that just when you start thinking about when you create results that you don't want, or you start losing your peace, to bring yourself back to that ground zero of like, what are the thoughts that are having me lose my peace right now? Same thing when you created the results you wanted, to go back to that ground zero and go, what are the things and beliefs and thoughts that are actually supporting me in creating the results that I want? And start really discerning which thoughts you want to allow and subscribe to in your mind that will create what you want. So let's just take a little bit of sharing. What I love to hear is just, what did you notice this week? So even if you didn't do any of the homework, just like, was there something that still kind of lingered from the last week's session? And also, if you were committed to doing your homework and then you didn't, why not? And just kind of start looking at that. And just, were you able to look at your results? What were your thoughts and beliefs around it? Did you do the vision worksheet or not? Did you notice and begin to master your thinking? Or my favorite one, did you just forget and get busy? And like I said, share about that anyway, because this course is designed for it to work in the background anyway. And so I would love to hear, even from those people that didn't do anything, like, was there stuff that occurred? And start debriefing yourself, okay? So if we could get some sharing. If you want to share, you could just unmute yourself. Okay, Cherie's going to start. I can unmute you. Go for it. Oh, you're muted. Hold on. There you go.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to say something that I think is really relevant, and you kind of just said it at the tail end of what you were saying, where this course is meant to be working in the background. So what that looks like for me is, no, I didn't do the homework. However, the conversation that we had last week did actually sink in, because I noticed in other ways I was really doing it. So maybe I didn't, because I'm kind of like that. I tend to like beat to my own drum and kind of do things the way I do things, right? I think a lot of us do, but I do notice the correlation. And I think Joe and I were just talking about that yesterday, where like there are things that are showing up where I'm seeing how I operate, and when I do commit to something, like what needs to happen within me for that to materialize. So I think it's very true that this is kind of working in the background. It's like a conversation that's just kind of there, just marinating. And if you allow it, like, you're going to start seeing it show up in all kinds of ways. So
Awesome.
that's my experience. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right. Who else? Thank you, Cherie. Yes, Annabelle.
So I'm very glad, and I wanted to thank you for the course, because I think you're absolutely amazing. I went to last week and I had to listen to everything again. And oh my gosh, it was so meaningful because I was slacking last week. I had not watched the movie, so then I had to go watch it, and then it touched my heart. All of you listening to you, so I made sure it's how I show up in life. I want to do things. I've been wanting to do transformational work for 10 years, and I just don't do it. So I loved your story, and I'm glad I get to share it with you. I loved your story of how you started it, and I watched the video again, and your family and your parents and your passion and your consistency. And I know you've been through so much, and here you are. Like what happened? You don't even talk about all the shit I'm sorry, all the bad stuff that has happened in your life. But I've had a lot of stuff too. I've been in practice in medicine for 20 years. I had a medical malpractice. I had a legal malpractice. Obviously we don't talk about that because it's the flats, it's that walk, it's the walk to heaven. So that helped me enormously. Just your power, your inspiration in the video helped me a lot. And I'm still slacking. I didn't print out the sheet for doing the vision work, but I did all morning. All I've done is listening to your video and the work and the sharing of everybody. And it's been very meaningful to me. So I just wanted to thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, thank you. And that vision sheet can be done, you know, a year from now. It's actually a tool that you can use at any point and any time. So keep it. All right, who's next? Let's see. Yes.
Hey, this is Michael. So I did not only did I not do the work for last week, I actually have missed last week and have not chosen to make the time and go back and watch the video. And so, I mean, it's coming clear to me that it's all my choices. And like even now I'm like here and I'm kind of like doing a working lunch and I'm driving and I'm like trying to talk to people and like be on this call. And like in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, could I eat my lunch? Like I'm trying to think of like what else I could do, like how else I could multitask. And like I get to look at that. So that's like showing up for me, like how I try and squeeze everything together and do like 12 things at one time and how that actually works out.
Yeah, and are you noticing when it works out and then also when it doesn't, and start looking at the thoughts that are producing when it works out? Like, do you just surrender and everything becomes effortless, or when it doesn't work out, are you resisting it?
Well, I feel like I've already, even though I'm trying to do a bunch of different things at one time, I've already made the choice of like what of those 10 things are actually going to get done and which ones are going to kind of get cast. So it's like I'm trying to do it one and like actually 3 or 4 times and like I know it's not going to get done.
Got it. You broke out a little bit at the very end there, but I think we got the gist. So thank you, Michael. Appreciate that. Let's see if there's anyone else that would like to share. Yes, Bev. Do you want me to unmute you, or can you do it? You got it? There we go.
I can do it.
Yep.
Yeah, I've been, I've been thinking the same thing about the course and some of the ideas running in the background. And, I've never done the gratitude training, but obviously I know quite a bit about it. And the thing that's been in the back of my mind this week is this notion of creating your own reality. And, I have a situation that's difficult that I've been dealing with, and it basically has to do with another person who doesn't subscribe to that idea, who is creating a lot of chaos for other people. And so I've just been running that idea in my mind all week. And, I think that's something that is important that maybe a lot of people don't think about.
Yeah, and it gets challenging sometimes because you can see that it would support them if they took that stand of responsibility, yet they're nowhere near doing so. So then how do you start looking at how am I creating that showing up in my life? And is it possible to alter the relationship by simply altering the way that you think? And that's the crazy part.
That's the crazy part. That's the part I've been working on.
Yes. Yeah, I worked on that a lot, and I still do sometimes with my family specifically, and it can get challenging for sure. It can get challenging, and I also see that when I change my thoughts and my thinking, I have literally transformed my relationship with my parents, and they're still the same because my brothers still have that relationship I used to have with them, and they're complaining about them and blah 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 blah. And I have shifted something, whether it's of acceptance and meeting people where they're at and not getting triggered. And so now I can actually have a relationship with them, and my brothers can't in the same way. So they haven't changed. I did. So that's where that responsible conversation comes in. So thank you, Bev, for that. All right, let's get going. We have a lot to cover today. Today's session is called We're Always in Integrity. The question is, what are we in integrity with? But first, today's the first principle from the book that we're going to talk about. So there's 5 principles in the book: integrity, responsibility, gratitude, service, and community. So today we're going to cover the first principle, which is integrity. But first, what is a principle? Like, what is a principle? And more importantly, what are your principles? It's something that we don't always think about. Essentially, a principle is, what is that virtue that you value, or that the value systems. What do you value in life? What's important to you? And sort of making it into this principle that you choose to live by. And it's, we might value tons and tons of stuff, but at the end of the day, there's going to be a few that you can consciously choose to sort of like gear your life, steer your ship in life with. Like, these are my principles. These are the ones I'm going to stand by. And so for me, the integrity, responsibility, gratitude, service, and community sort of evolved over time. And I started seeing that by having this experience of all of them in my life started falling into place. And now that I'm saying that, it's funny because someone just shared, what I've been going through in the last few years, and it's been kind of rough, that there probably is another principle emerging for me right now, in addition to those 5. And I don't know, maybe it's surrender, I don't know. But there's definitely things that constantly has you shift. But it's important to highlight what they are, because if you don't, then you're just moving about your life in this darkness or in this asleepness. So my goal for you guys, and my invitation, is that throughout this course, you obviously listen to the principles that I will be presenting here and see if any of them land for you. And then also start exploring your principles, who do you really want to be, and what do you want to, really put everything you have behind in your life, and then make that your principles. So I'm going to ask a question, and if you're not on video, there's a way to raise your hand so I can see it, but if you're on video, I can actually see all of you right in front of me. So I'm going to ask a question, and I'm going to ask you to raise your hand if it's true for you. So how many of you would say that you are a man or woman of your word? Okay, thank you. Hands down. And how many of you would actually say you're not a man or woman of your word? Thank you. Hands down. So I saw some of you are somewhere in between, right? It's like, yes, I am in some areas and maybe not in all areas. So just notice that. So we're going to go into integrity on kind of a deep level, and maybe a little different than how you might have looked at integrity your whole life. And so the main idea that we're going to explore is that you're always in integrity, right? So that's kind of a weird thing to just throw out there, like, you're always in integrity. What does that mean? Because maybe you're late, maybe you didn't show up for your kid's soccer game and you said you would, maybe, how could I still be in integrity? So the way we're going to look at integrity is that you're actually always in integrity with your thoughts and beliefs. So whatever has you not be integrity in the outside world, you're actually still in integrity with how you have it. So there might be a thought or belief that has you be late, like, you know, I'm not worthy, or whatever that is that has you always show up late, or even a thought that just says, I can never be on time. Just that thought will actually produce that. So you're in integrity with the thought that I will never be on time, but you're then kind of, quote unquote, out of integrity in the real world if you make promises. You guys with me so far? Okay, that's good. So this is really a gift of the principle of integrity, because the thing is, you are now able to shift your thinking and your context so that you will be in integrity in the worldly matters. Because anytime you break your word in the world, if you start looking at what were the thoughts that produced that result for you, you can start changing it here, right? And a lot of the times we don't even want to admit, like we want to like defend ourselves. Well, there was traffic, or there was that, or there was that, all these different excuses of why you were late or why you broke your word. And that's not going to support you. What's going to support you is, what is it that has me consistently produce that result in my life? What am I thinking? Who am I being that has me be late or break my word? Okay. So there's the interesting thing about integrity is that when we break our word, just hear this, when we break our word, we are simply making a thought or a belief more important than keeping our word. Okay. So when we break our word, we're just making a thought or a belief more important than keeping our word. So we tend to be right about the thought we have. So if my thought is, you know what, I can just never be on time. I can never be on time. I can never be on time. It's going to keep showing up. I'm making that thought and me being right about that thought more important than actually just stepping up, changing the thought and start being on time and start keeping my word. So once our ground zero, like the thoughts start matching the results that we want, then it's almost impossible to break our word. And I noticed that when I took the gratitude training, because, you know, we really hammer down integrity in the gratitude training. And I started noticing that even when I was like totally on track to be late, because I had changed my thoughts about it, like it was almost like I could bend time suddenly, like traffic just disappeared, and I would always walk in on time. I couldn't even be late anymore. And so that's because I changed my thoughts around it. So in my book, I talk about 3 different levels of integrity. And we're actually going to do something really cool today. We're going to do a little integrity check, a little test. But I talk about 3 levels. And so the first level is keep your promises. Just keep your promises. If you make a promise to yourself or to others, keep them. That's kind of like a pretty nuts and bolts version of integrity. So keep your promises. The next level of integrity has to do with principles, and it essentially says live by your principles. So essentially, once you've determined what your principles are, be willing to be a stand for those principles. So let's say that one of your principles is honesty, and let's just say honesty, and you are finding yourself not being honest, or there's non-honesty showing up around you. Like, how do you be a stand for that principle and not selling out to, you know, whether it's like wanting approval or being safe and not causing a ripple, right? So live by your principle and be willing to stand by them and be that stand. Not necessarily be positioned, now you want everyone else to have those principles, or, you know, not about that. It's about you for you. What is a stand? How do you stand powerfully in your principles? So that's the second level of integrity. The third level of integrity is essentially honor your word as yourself. So honor your word as yourself. And what this means is that essentially our word is something that no one can take away from you, right? Who could possibly take your word away from you? You can't, no one can. So that's yours. It's kind of like gratitude on some way. I always say no one can take your gratitude away. No one can take your word away from you. So it's going to be up to you if you honor it. It's yours. And so essentially it says, be who you say you are. If you say you are, I'm a good father. If you say you are, I'm a person of integrity. If you say you are these things, then match that. Have that match with what you say. So that is honor your word as yourself. And before I kind of continue into the integrity check, I would love to just open up in case anyone has any questions, because I know I kind of like threw out a lot there for you. Yes, Liz.
Hi, can you speak into ground zero? You said that ground zero gets to match like what we want. Can you just speak about the ground zero?
Yeah, yes. So ground zero, and it's something we worked on in our vision exercise last week. And so ground zero is essentially the first step. It's like the soil of who you are in order to manifest your vision and have your results come through, right? And what it is it's your thoughts. It's right above your way of being. It's like everything is mind, everything is thought, everything is generated through thought. And so we can actually literally change the trajectory of our whole future by simply changing and inserting a thought that's going to support what you want, rather than subscribing to all those thoughts that has been kind of parroting in our mind since maybe even since we were little. You know, like you're dyslexic, you're not good enough, you're this, you're that, whatever. And then we just kind of repeat those thoughts, and they are constantly creating what we don't want. So what are the thoughts that will have you create what you do want, and start putting those in, literally reprogramming yourself.
So on this, for this, I put, I am enough, I have enough.
Yep.
So that's my ground zero.
Yeah.
Where
Exactly.
everything stems from that. I am enough, I have enough.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
You nailed it.
It.
All right, any other questions? All right. Okay, so are you guys ready to take a little integrity test? So the way it's going to work is I'm going to launch a poll that's going to come up on your screen with 10 questions, and you can answer each question. And what I'd like you to do is really be willing to be honest. Like really, like no one's necessarily, like we're going to see the answers, but it's not going to be named. So we won't know that you answered XYZ. We'll just see where people are kind of landing. And so my invitation is to just go there, like really kind of be willing to get really honest with yourself as you answer these 10 questions, because the more you go for it, the more value you will create. Okay. So I'm going to launch it right now. And here we go. There's about 5 more people that are still answering. If you've finished, you can reflect on it. If you want to journal, you can. All right. I think everybody has voted, so I'm going to end the poll and then I'm going to show you the results. And you can scroll down yourself, but let's just talk about it a little bit. So, you know, here we are. You know, people like most people want to be man and woman of our word and be in integrity with everything. Yet we all, human beings, we tend to fall a little short. And that's okay. It's just because we have conversations and thoughts that are having those results. So if you look, for instance, you know, when I say I will show up for an appointment or specific time, so often is the highest answer, like many times we are showing up, right? But then there's still the rarely I don't. Pay my bills on time often, but not always. Always is still there. There's a lot of you that do, but then there's a lot of often and rarely's. I honor my commitments to family members, including my children. You guys can see that. Many of us do. I gossip. It's also interesting. None of us said never, right? Because we all do it. Let's face up. And some of us do it often. I tell half-truth or white lies, rarely and often. I go against my values to gain approval, rarely, never often. My actions are incongruent with whom I want to be. I say I believe in acceptance, yet I'm very judgmental. Often, right? We tend to be like, I stand for acceptance and unity and peace, and then we're like creating chaos in our home and we're judging our family, right? People trust me and view me as a man, woman of my word. We still like to have the notion that most people see that, and I think that a lot of people probably do. Yet we know, because I think a lot of the times we break our word to ourselves more than anyone else. And then you got the people I break my word to most are, and this is always shocking when I see this, and it's true for many people, is usually the people that are the closest to us, immediate family. Because it's easy to break your word there because you know they're still going to be there, right? So we do, but that's how we create trouble in our immediate family and with our friends. When I don't keep my word or I'm out of integrity, I clean it up or I fess up immediately. So many of you often do that, and that is actually a great quality to have. And the thing is, I do, when I do the live course, this question, if you actually say always here, it is so powerful that it almost makes you a man, woman of integrity at all times, because it's impossible for us to keep our word all the time, right? But if you fess up and clean it up, it's like automatically forgiveness and clear space for you to go again, right? So that's really where you want to keep your integrity. It's like, I mean, there's nothing, I'm going to use the word sexy. There's nothing sexier than someone that, like, you know that they're lying or something, and then you go, oh my God, I just lied, didn't I? And they just like literally fess up right away. Now you trust them immediately because they're that aware of themselves. So I'm gonna stop sharing this and we'll take a little bit of sharing on this. So if you want to share what came up, was there anything that was shocking to you? Was there anything where you were like, wow, I didn't realize that about myself, or I didn't realize that about others in my life or others here?
One thing I was looking for with in one of the answers was, are you in integrity with yourself? And that's huge for me, is being in integrity with myself, as far as like, oh, I say I'm gonna lose 10 pounds, oh, but I don't lose it. Or I say I'm going to save a certain amount of money and I don't. Or I say I'm gonna get this certification and I don't, you know? So it's like ultimately like being in integrity with myself.
You know,
For me.
it's funny you say that, because I was looking at the questions, and actually on the question that is the people I break the word to the most, there's actually supposed to be one more that says myself. So that I thank you for that. And so yes, most of us, that's where we tend to break our word, because we have an underlying conversation that says, I'm not good enough, I don't matter, I'm not worthy, whatever it is, wherever that came from, that has us be like, well, I can break it to myself because I'm a piece of crap anyway, doesn't matter. And no one's gonna call me on it, because, you know, I'm just gonna let that one slide.
Yeah, that's huge for me. It doesn't matter. And that's like a lot about my lateness. It doesn't matter. They're okay. You know, it's that it doesn't matter that gets me in trouble.
Yeah. All right, anyone else? Like, are you judging your results? Are you praising them? What are your thoughts that you have behind it? Yes, Annabelle, go ahead.
I know for me, it's been huge defining my integrity and my principles, having a daughter. And I realized there was a big chunk part of my life that I lived my life to please my parents. And then I did the training and I developed my own value system. And I learned how to honor my word. But then I also said that I was a free, authentic, loving woman. So I feel as a woman, and I know we're a lot here, sometimes integrity can be hard. And that's kind of what I wanted to share, because I know a lot of people go through the same thing, right? When you're in a relationship and you say you're committed and you're in love, but yet you're really not honoring your word, because we live in a society that is like, well, you did this, so I'm going to do that. So I know for me, when you question the integrity and the principles, I'm almost reformulating my value system, because I can't live for my parents and I can't live for my kid. So that's kind of what I'm hearing, is kind of growing that principle with a sense of integrity of what I want, and still not buy into pleasing other people.
Yeah, that's a huge one, because pleasing people is usually easier than keeping our word to ourselves. All right, let's see, one more person. Yes, Jared.
So it's kind of related to what you said at the end about, you know, it almost being physically impossible to keep your word 100% of your time. Because I noticed that I was answering most of them with often, or almost always, or rarely in the other case. But I kind of feel in integrity with doing my best, but also being open to what changes happen. Because sometimes like, it's almost I'm not egotistical, but it's almost, who am I to say that I know how something should go? So even if I say something is going to go a certain way, if it ends up being better to go a different way, am I out of integrity? So there's that type of extended edge case, and the other edge case of being like, well, what if it like truly doesn't matter? And so for the quick example, it's like, if you say, I'm going to send you something, I'm going to send you a report by 10 p.m., but you end up sending it to them by 10 a.m. the next day, and they're not delivering the report until 5 p.m. and they're not going to look at it in the meantime, and those extra 10 hours, you can make it 100 times better. I just noticed within myself that there exists that space where I am, I guess, still figuring that out, whether it's what, yeah, but that's basically the main thing, that I was giving the almost always and rarely answer and just kind of working out some marginalia.
Yeah, and it could get tricky there, because if you begin to use your assumptions in order to fit the way that you want it to happen, or the way that you're doing it, um, you might assume wrong. So in a case like your example, for instance, what would be in integrity would be to contact them prior and say, listen, like, I'm running late here, and can we change the deadline to 10 a.m. and get that okay? Now, if they're like, nope, that's not okay, I need it by 10 p.m., then yeah, you know, they might say no to your request, and yes, you broke that word. Then it's like, okay, I acknowledge my broken agreement, and I'm not going to be able to get it to you until 10, but I get that I broke my agreement. And then it's on you. Then it's for you to kind of go, okay, so what is it that has me go to the last minute? Or what are the thoughts that produces me not just, you know, doing what I say, kind of thing. And yes, I mean, the only reason I think that we can say that there are gray areas, because there really aren't any gray areas. If you give your word, keep it, right? But the gray area is actually when we start looking at it from like, wait, what am I in integrity with? And maybe it's perfect, and maybe this is that. And that's all true, but don't use that as an excuse for you breaking your word. Clean up your word being broken, and then you can look like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's kind of what I'm saying, is that this exercise created a clearing into the space where I can now see that for what it is. It's not that it's an excuse, just I now see it.
Totally. Awesome. Thank you. So actually, this is a perfect kind of segue into this tool that I want to give you, that is sort of going to support you in looking, and also support you in taking responsibility, and even opening up the space to be able to look. And so the tool is called Because And. It's the Because And tool. And I made it up, but that's what it's called. That's how I named it. And essentially it's taking a situation. So let's say you're like, you're at Starbucks, and there's a long line, but you're about to go to a meeting. And because you want your coffee, you're going to just be like, okay, I'm going to be a little late. You walk into the meeting 5 minutes late, and you're like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm late. I'm late because there was a line at Starbucks. And most people in today's world are like, oh, okay, you know, have a seat, right? Now, when you do that, when you say because there was a line at Starbucks, or because there was traffic, I am late, or because, you know, XYZ happened, you know, I am out of integrity, you're actually giving yourself an out. You're giving yourself an out, and you're also not giving yourself an in to be able to look at why, right? So the way to sort of uncollapse the two events is by changing the word because and injecting the word and. So it would sound like this. And you could do it to yourself. Yes, you can do it to the meeting you're going to too, but just do it to yourself first, which essentially is, you know, I'm so sorry I'm late, and there was a line at Starbucks, right? So now you've uncollapsed the circumstance or the excuse away from the fact that you were late, you were out of integrity. I can now acknowledge the fact that I'm out of integrity, I am late, I did not keep my word, I'm committed to keeping it in the future, you know. And then you have, there was a line at Starbucks. It's completely unrelated, because you could have made it on time. You just choose to grab something to, you know, justify that you were out of integrity, because it's, you know, people have this notion that it's really bad to be out of integrity, but it's a way for you to clean it up. Now, you can do this on really big stuff. Okay, so I just used an example of, you know, getting a coffee, right? But there's other ways in your life that this tool can just support you. And this is not necessarily fully, this kind of leads into our conversation next week, which is about responsibility and taking 100% responsibility. So you can use it for some of the really tough stories that you have in your life. So for instance, let's say I was abused by because I was abused by my father, I think all men are scum. Okay, so that's probably something that, not a lot, but some people have that conversation, right? Or because I was raped, I am unworthy. And then you live your life from that unworthy space. Okay. Now, if you choose to look at it and change the word because to and, now it becomes, I was abused by my father and I live my life as if men are scum. Okay. Or I was raped and I have a conversation that I'm not worthy. So what you're doing is you're actually uncollapsing the fact of I was abused by my father with the story you're still holding on to that says, because of that, men are scum. Now you're just saying, I was abused by my father. Got it. Today, 20 years later, I have a conversation that says men are scum. And by not using the because, you're not collapsing them anymore. You're uncollapsing them. And now you could just be like, wait, do I still want to live right here with the thought and belief that men are scum, and how is that supporting me in my life? And not blaming this incident. And this is actually a tool and a concept that's really important for those of you that are coaches or work with people, because what happens sometimes, so let's say it's that example, and you're coaching someone and they're like, men, because I was abused by my father, men are scum, right? So they have this thing, and you start coaching them on, well, you shouldn't think that men are scum. You could do this, because they have it collapsed. All they can unconsciously hear is that dad didn't abuse me. Okay? Because they have it so collapsed. So now they're not going to take your coaching because you're literally in their sometimes conscious, sometimes unconscious mind thinking that you're saying no, because if I let go of this thought, that means this wasn't true. But if you can help them uncollapse it first and go, yes, I get it. You were abused by your father. That was then, so be it. And of course it affected you. And of course it had all kinds of implications in your life. But right now, 20 years later, and you have this conversation right now, let's take that fact away and not connect them anymore. You have a conversation that says that men are scum. Are you open to working on that in today, like now in the present moment? And now you can actually start moving them to a place and not have it collapse with that. And it's actually crazy how many people, and I mean, including myself, we have these, and that we don't even realize where we have those connections that we're like, well, if I work on that, that means this is not true. And that's not so. It can be true, the fact can be true, but you can change your story about it. You guys have any questions? Because I know that's kind of a big distinction right there. Or comments. Or does anyone, go ahead.
Well, is the only way to do that by replacing the because, or are there other ways that shows up, do you think?
Well, there are other ways that you can do it, which is, like one of the things that we do in the training, we do a kind of an exercise called fact interpretation, where you actually, you can do it personally at home. You take a sheet of paper, and on one sheet of paper, you put fact at the top, and on the other one, you put the story, the interpretation you have about that fact. So it could be like, let's just keep the same story. So like, I was abused by my father, right? That was true. Let's say that was really a fact that was actually occurring. Then you could be like, what I made up was on the other sheet, I'm not worthy, men are scum, daddy doesn't love me. You just keep writing, right? And then you realize that the fact is the fact, but all that other stuff is really in your mind. Mm-hmm. Right? So then you can go, okay, well, are any of those still supporting me in what I want to create, or I'm just staying a victim to this incident that happened? And then you can start choosing to change the stories about it.
Cool.
Does that help?
Definitely.
Awesome. Anyone else? Yes, go ahead, Liz.
Where does but come into this? Because usually it's like, I love you, but So I learned instead of the but, you say and. I love you and. Where does the but come into the because and?
Well, I think the but, if you were to use a but, you actually probably are negating the actual fact,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it in this particular case, it doesn't really come in other than that in that particular way, I would say. You know, it's funny because we do this with the smallest stuff too, you know, like I didn't do my homework because my son was sick, right? I didn't do my homework and my son was sick. Now, who's it on, right? You know, there's so many different ways we do this. And at the end of the day, it's like bringing it back to being responsible in order to even have a choice about the way you're looking at it now. So like, I'm not asking you to take responsibility for the abuse or take responsibility for the rape or take responsibility for all, like, I'm not asking you to do that. What I'm asking you to do is begin to take responsibility for how you have it today, because you're actually not literally being abused in this moment. So then how do we do that? And it doesn't mean that you can't have compassion for what happened and forgiveness and, you know, all of that. And you can work through that. But there are certain thoughts that we ended up like for me, like I have like, it created like a very silly story, but it was huge for me. Like when I was little, my parents decided to go on a skiing trip, but I was only 6 and my brothers were like, you know, 10 and 12, and they took them on the trip and they didn't take me, right? And as a 6-year-old, this was like the most devastating thing. And then there was another incident that had to do with my family that was similar to that. And so the thoughts that I made up and the story I made up was that I will always be separate from my family. The 4 of them, it's like the 4 of them against me. And so what happens? They're all alcoholics. I got sober for 10 years. You know, I ended up being the gay one. I ended up, you know, going to transform the world, and they're just like very worldly, you know, like I did every single thing because of that thought. In some cases, it actually supported me. And in some cases it didn't, because it was just, you know, the other thing I had was I have to do everything by myself. That's where it hasn't supported me, where I'm like, I do everything by myself because no one else is going to do it for me, because it's the 4 of them against me. So it's with little stuff. So now I can be like, you know, they went on vacation and I have this belief system that I have to do everything by myself. Well, that's not working for me anymore. Instead of using it as an excuse every time I try to do everything by myself. Well, it's because they did that. It's because they did that. And I just keep doing it, right? It's time to stop. And it's time to change that thought. Anyone else? All right. You guys are awesome. So, like I said, next week, we're going to talk about responsibility, which is the second principle to live by to create peace on the planet. And we just kind of started touching on it right now, and we're going to kind of dig into it and dive into it a little harder next week. And so the homework, let me share the screen here so you can see it. Homework, there we go. So the homework for this week is commit. This is a tough one, but let's do it. This is fun. Commit to being on time for an entire week. Okay? So I know we're in the middle of a pandemic. Maybe you don't have all that many appointments and stuff, but you know, you could insert, you know, commit to being your word for the entire week, because it might be little stuff that happens at home even. And so each time you're not on time or your word, stop and look what other commitments or conversations were more important. And then make a conscious effort not to be a victim about it. And then honor your result as neutral, because if you think it's bad that you broke your word, then it clouds the way you can actually do your self-coaching or becoming a self-cleaning oven, like we say. So honor your result as neutral so you can really look. Number 2 is evoke your principles. So some of you might already be crystal clear in what your principles are, and some of you may not. And like I said, they're forever evolving, especially during these times. So find 15 minutes to meditate and reflect on your personal principles. So essentially, what are your values, the virtues that you can align behind, or the character traits that serves your vision for the world? So first, in those 15 minutes, spend 3 minutes breathing and just quieting your mind, because, we talked about this. We have a lot of chatter. So just breathe and try to quiet your mind. And when thoughts come in, let them just move through. Then for the following 10 minutes, keep asking yourself the question. You can do it out loud, or you could do it in your mind. What are my principles? What are my principles? And when you feel like you want to just stop asking it, you can quiet yourself and breathe and just see if any answers are coming, or, whatever happens. And then if you feel stuck, just keep asking the question. Some of you might just sitting asking that question for 10 minutes. Some of you are going to ask it once, and you're going to start really thinking what they are. It's not about doing it right or wrong. And then the last 2 minutes, reflect on what emerged. Like reflect on what kind of like critical thinking a little bit. Like you're not really meditating at that point anymore. You're just like reflecting, like, okay, what came? And so again, it's not designed for you to get crystal clear right away. It's an exercise you can start to begin to invite the principles that matter to you, invite them into your consciousness. And number 3, mentalism homework is think the change. So become aware of what thoughts and conversations you are in integrity with when you are your word and when you break your word. So a lot of us usually only look when we're in breakdown. We only are willing to do the work when things are not so good. But the most important work to do is actually to do the work when things are awesome. Because you want to learn what had it be awesome so you can put more of the awesome in. So when you are your word, what worked? Oh, I was, I knew I was going to be on time, or whatever it is. And then put more of that in. And then use the mental tool of the because and by replacing your becauses with and watch your stories uncollapse so that you can begin to take responsibility of how you frame it in your mind now. And this is actually a key to freedom. And so, yes, it's under mentalism homework, but if you feel like there's some serious work to do there, I would invite you to journal about it, or write down the sentence that you have collapsed and then write it again uncollapsed, and then start separating it so that you could just be like, wow, I'm just choosing to hold on to this story about this, and it is not making me feel joyous and have my life work right now. So let me start looking at a different, better story that's going to support me. All right, any questions about the homework? And of course, I'm going to email all this to you. No? Wow, I was actually, I know I kind of raced through a little bit because I know we only have an hour, and I actually made it on time today because today there's actually a lot here. So if you need to rehear some of it, just, go back in, because both the notion of integrity and then beginning to start taking responsibility is life-changing, literally life-changing. And again, breathe into it and know that even if you're not doing all the busy work around it and try to do everything right and be perfect and all the stuff, that it's like Cherie and some of you else said, like it's marinating. This stuff is going to be marinating. That's why it's an 8-week course, and we're not just slam dunking it on you and then you go out in your life. Like this is about marinating into a new consciousness of leadership. So I will play I'm going to say our song, because I play the same one every time. And, if you guys want to hang out, listen to it, please feel free to do so. If not, I love you all, and I'll send you the email, and I'll see you next week. Thank you. Okay, let me share this.
I've been so still, afraid of crumbling. Have I been careless, dismissing all the distant rumblings? Take me where I am I'm supposed to be, to comprehend the things that I can't see. 'Cause I need to move, I need to wake up, I need to change, I need to shake up, I need to speak out. Something's got to break up. I've been asleep and I need to wake up now. And as a child, I danced like it was 1999. My dreams were wild, the promise of this new world would be mine. Now I am throwing off the carelessness of youth to listen to an inconvenient truth that I need to move, I need to wake up, I need to change, I need to shake up, I need to speak out. Something's got to break up. I've been asleep and I need to wake up now. I am not an island, I am not alone. I am my intentions trapped here in this flesh and bone, and I need to move, I need to wake up, I need to change, I need to shake up, I need to speak out. Something's got to break up. I've been asleep and I need to wake up now. I wanna change, I need to shake up, I need to speak out. Oh, something's gotta break up. I've been asleep and I need to wake up now.
All right, you guys, thank you so much. Love you all. See you next week.
Love you, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.